All right, in this video, we're going to be using an application on the Mac that comes with a computer that will allow us to adjust some of the lighting and some of the issues with some of our photos. And so I'm going to be using some photos here that are some test photos. I've actually duplicated the folder. You'll see that down here I have photos for test. Let me bring this up a little bit differently. But when I open a Finder window and I click on desktop, you'll notice that I have a folder called Photos for Test. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on that folder and choose duplicate. So we now have two folders. Within this folder, the copy one, you'll notice that there are some images. And when we look at these images, they're a little bit dark. You know, they're very usable, but it's a little bit dark, and the color is maybe a little bit off because of the lighting. So what we're going to do first with this case is I'm going to go ahead and rename these. So that was photo 1. We're also naming them in such a way where it's photo 01, photo 02, photo 03. If you want to rename a file on the Mac, you click and then hover. Okay, don't double click, but click once and hover, and then you can just start typing. So photo 04, photo 05, photo 06. Okay, so there's our photos ready to go. So on the Mac, if we open these files, you can open them one at a time, or if you have this view, this list view, actually this one's cover flow, you'll notice on the Mac that I can view my files in different ways. So this icon at the top shows me that I have all of the images in thumbnails. The second icon shows me that I have a list. The third icon is something called panels, which is what I usually use. With panels, you can actually click on an image and it shows you a preview off to the right. It also gives you information. For example, I can see the size, the dimensions of this image are very large. So this view tends to give you a lot of information. And then if you're just flipping through photos, you can use cover flow. And cover flow, you can use your arrow keys or your mouse to scroll back and forth. Okay, so that's very handy. But let's go back to the panels view, or the panes. So in this case, what I want to do is I want to click and drag across all of those images. And you'll notice that by doing that, I'm selecting all of the images at once. Then hover your mouse over the name, any one of them, and double click. When you do that, you launch an application called Preview. And the Preview app on your Mac is actually an application that is like Adobe Acrobat. It will let you open any image, any PDF, but it's built in, it's free, and it's going to let us do a lot of things we need to do. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is we're going to go in and crop, and you'll notice that there's a crosshair. My cursor is a crosshair. So what we're going to do is we're going to click and drag a box around this, and you'll actually see that there's some handles here. So you can hover over these handles and your cursor will change to a little arrow and you can click and drag. From that, once you've isolated this and said, hey, I only want this part of the image, you can then go up to the tools, under the tools menu, and choose crop, which is Command K for crop. Okay, and you'll notice that that crops the photo nicely. And our goal here is that we want to isolate basically the most helpful part of the image for our users. So you can move this around. If you hover over the middle, you'll see that your cursor changes to a hand. Okay, when you're done, go to Tools and choose Crop again. All right, and there's a little extra on this side, so I can just basically do that again and maybe eliminate some off the side. Again, Tools, Crop. Okay, and that's nicely centered. In the third picture, we don't need this scrap right here or the ruler, so we're going to isolate this to be only the part with her wire and the fingers. Tools, and then crop again. The next one this image, what we're trying to show the user is that we're measuring a piece of wire that's approximately 4 inches. So we don't really need the crimping pliers or the wire jig. So we'll go ahead and draw a box here that crops those items out. I'm going to hover over this handle here to bring this down a little bit. And then when I'm done, Tools and Crop. And I'm just going to basically go down the list by clicking on the picture I want to look at. Okay, do that, Tools, Crop. And the very last one, this one is going to be a good photo that we'll use for a main photo. And so I can see here that there's the edge of a table and somebody's leg, so I want to get rid of those. But again, Tools and Crop. All right, so that's going to be it. Now we need to go adjust the color. So what we want to do is go back up to the top, and you can go to the Tools menu and choose Adjust Color. And what you see here, this is a very useful tool with your images. You'll see that there's a graph here that shows a distribution of colors within your document with red, green, and blue. You'll see that over here there's a blank area where there's not really any graph. That area is what's making this image dark. So if I click on this Auto Levels button, you'll notice that all of a sudden this gets much brighter and it's a little bit easier. You'll also see this little handle up here. It moved over, so if you make some minor adjustments, you can do that. But Auto Colors works really, really well. The second thing that we do is we go down to the tint, because this is what's called the color temperature of your image. If you click on this little dropper, and then you click somewhere a neutral gray within your image, it's going to adjust the color and adjust for lighting. So in this one, what I think I can kind of see is that there might have been some incandescent lighting and then also some shadows here. So it's got two different colors, but this is about as good as we're going to get on this one, but it's perfectly usable. All right, so we're going to go to the next one. So we go to the next image. Again, you can see in your histogram that it's missing a bunch of information up here, which means it's too dark. So click Auto Levels, and it's still looking a little dark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag that handle over and brighten it up. Now you can also compare this with the first image. So the first one's a little blue, this one's a little bit more yellow. So we're going to choose our dropper. We're going to pick a neutral gray and see if we can brighten that up. That actually looks all right. But if we wanted to, we could even tweak it a little bit here to see if we can get that to match the first one. And I'm sorry, this is the color, the color temperature is the next one up, and so we'll play with that a little bit too. But anyway, it looks very similar to the top one, so we'll move on to the next. Again, Auto Levels, use your dropper, find a gray. And when I chose this area down here, it made it very green looking. So if I move around a little bit, I can choose a different area and see if that whitens it. And you'll notice it's still a little bit wider than this previous one, but that's okay. If we want, we can go back to this one and we can maybe brighten that up. Looks like maybe the shadows. Okay, if we use the shadow slider, we can brighten that. Let's see what highlights does. Okay, but anyway, that's looking a little bit better. So we'll go ahead and leave it. So if we go to the next one, you'll notice again, we've switched from this, which is bright. This one's very dark. Again, we're looking at our histogram, and sure enough, up on the right-hand side, that needs help. So just by clicking the Auto Levels button, you'll see that we're able to brighten it up. Again, we might need to test the color down here, see if we can get it to auto adjust, and it did some. We could go down here to the shadows and bring that up a little bit, make it a little bit brighter. And that picture looks much better. Next one, same thing, Auto Levels. It didn't do it quite all the way. In fact, it darkened some of it. So I'm going to drag this over and brighten it up. But it also has these harsh black shadows in here. That's because of this slider here. See the difference? That's real dark and harsh. This one softens it out a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and leave that. Again, we'll test the temperature. See if we can get that to adjust, and that looks pretty good. And on this one too, if you look at it, now that we are looking at it a little bit larger, we can see that it's actually a little bit blurry. So you could go ahead and retake one of these if you wanted to. This one is borderline, but we can still use it in a tutorial. Okay, and then the very last one, this is going to be the main image. Again, we're going to use auto levels, but notice that it didn't do very much. So we're going to drag this handle over and help it out a little bit. Okay, then we're going to test the color with our little dropper here. So go find something that makes it look a little bit more like the rest of them. That looks good. And then if you need to, you can adjust your shadows and highlights, or your temperature to get it right. And as I compare it to the previous one, this one's a little bit more pink. So I might even, play around with the tint on that one and some of the shadows. See if I can brighten that up a bit as well. All right, so that's pretty much it for the color adjustment. So we're going to do that to all of our images. And as long as they're close, it doesn't have to be perfect, but if we can get them close, that's extremely helpful. So for the very last step, we need to select the first image, but we also need to select them all. So if you go to the Edit menu and choose Select All of your images are selected, and you can tell by this gray bar that's around them. Once the images are selected, then you can go up to Tools again and choose Adjust Size. And so what we want it to do is we want the width to be 400 pixels. So we're going to go ahead and type in 400 pixels. Okay, and then we're going to click OK. And then we're done. We just close out of this window and go back and look at our photos. One of the things that you'll notice, so here's the original photos. Okay, so photo 1 was 2.1 megabytes, which means that it's 2100K, 2100K. The adjusted one here is 50K. So this one's 61. So you can see that the difference in the size of the images are huge. This also, when you now take these and put them into a Word document, your Word document will be smaller and it will mail a lot better. But the largest that we need is going to be about 400 pixels wide. But the important thing about this is that you want to crop the photos first, then resize them down. Because if you were to take the original photo, resize it, and then go in and take a portion of it, it's too small for us and we can't use it. So that is how to crop photos and recolor them on a Mac using the existing Preview app that's already on your computer.